Hello, greetings. Welcome to Love is My Service Dog YouTube channel, where we talk about complex post-traumatic stress disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder and my beautiful service dog in training, Satori-chan. I won't make her, I don't make her be part of my content because we're off, obviously. So if she had to be on all the time that I was on my computer, she'd hate me. She would never want to be in service to me, right? Our dogs, our work dogs, need to be off and they need to be on, and I make the vest, and she has to still wear her mouth guard trainer, otherwise she would not act appropriate for public access. I take antidepressants, and this is one of the things that I tried to get to remind myself, like, if I missed a pill, and I had this system, I was like, oh, it really works if I keep the tabs open like this. It reminds me of, like, did you ever have those things for Christmas Eve, like you were counting the days to Christmas? But it still didn't work because today is friggin' Friday, and I can look at this and then feel bad about the fact that I missed my meds. So I'll take them now. Because I make doing my meds on camera part of these videos. I snorted them to see if anything would happen. Nothing happened. I missed my meds, so today is Friday. I'll try to take them 12 hours apart, so I'll wait until 2 in the morning maybe, or really late. I usually go to bed at midnight. I get sleepy at midnight, and so occasionally I'll stay up really late. I've been watching the George Floyd case, so this is an example of medication that I take daily, and I wish there was a way for me to train the dog to remind me to take my medication. So, for example, service dogs that are diabetic, they bark, I believe, when their blood sugar is low. But, like, I was like, Satori, did you see this today? Woof, 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 woof. Did you see this? Woof, woof. Bark when I don't take my meds, okay? So it kind of doesn't work that way. When you're training on a task, you have to, like, they have to smell a scent or see a repetitive behavior or something, and then they would react to that repetitive behavior. And so since I'm a highly functioning person, a lot of the things that my disability does are inside my brain, and so there's really not a way for my service dog to alert to them. So my thinking is that I would just train her on certain alerts, even if that isn't me having an anxiety attack. Like, I don't have externally, especially now that I'm medicated, I don't have externally, I guess I don't flip out. I rarely flip out like that dramatic anymore. And especially that I'm on meds and I have my dog, that has been my system, and that's why I have this channel, is just really helping people understand the process of getting a constant source. It's like having an IV of love is really what this is. And it's not just that, it's like it's training you at the same time to be a good parent, to be a good dog parent. So today we are adulting our employment, and we are asking for reasonable accommodations for our disability. And the first thing that you need to do in order to ask for reasonable accommodations, obviously, is to claim your disability. So this is the first year of my life that I've actually claimed a disability, and it's a disability that I've had since I was 12 or 13 years old, but I didn't know that I had until I was like 44. So I wasn't going to be able to claim a disability that I didn't know that I had. So now that I know that I have it, I can look at all of the symptoms, which are detailed in Pete Walker's Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Surviving to Thriving, which I have a copy of somewhere. That is the Bible of CPTSD. But I also have PTSD, which has its other symptoms and triggers, but a lot of the symptoms and triggers look the same. The reasons are different, and the possibility of being triggered by CPTSD in a school environment is a lot greater than you would expect, because you're always having interpersonal relationships with young people. So if you had a tumultuous childhood or a bad high school or a bad certain period, I mean, I happen to be teaching K through 12 as a substitute, but I was a high school teacher, and I didn't know that high school was a traumatic period of life for me. I mean, I guess I did, but I never identified high school as being so traumatic until I became a high school teacher. Then I started to get emotional flashbacks while I was a high school teacher, and I didn't understand that that was CPTSD doing its work and creating a snowball effect of consequences and burnout and just stress and anxiety attack, and its after effects of not understanding and being straightforward. I mean, there was just no way. There's no way you can know before you know. So now that I know, and if you're watching this video, then you know. So I'm not going to go on that tangent. Stop me. I wish you could like type in the comments and be like, you're going on a tangent, stop yourself. Anyway, so I have here, this is a flyer that, it has to be official because they are liable if your dog for some reason would attack a student, or let's say a student would provoke, more likely a student would provoke a service dog, and then a service dog would attack that student to protect themselves. That I always think about this in defense versus offense. I mean, service dogs are not supposed to be on the offensive. But I can imagine, like any other person, that they would protect themselves if they were provoked. And dogs tend to do that when they're afraid. So that's the only time that I would imagine. My dog is very passive and submissive. When confronted, I've noticed she plays with little baby chicks instead of attacks them, and she hasn't really, I'm not parenting her to kill, so she doesn't have that kill instinct. But yeah, so I work at a school, and I'm writing a letter. I'm going through the process. The first thing that you have to have is you have to release your medical information to them, and I well know that building a solid case is better. The more forthcoming that you are about your disability and what you need, the more anybody is going to be more accommodating to you for that. So if you're going to play this like I can't tell you game, then how are people going to, I mean, I understand, because I understand why you wouldn't. So I understand both ways, because it makes you look bad if you claim your disability. You're like, okay, I disassociate and run from a task. I'm sure that's kind of, it's really hard to even say that, even, if you're well far along in your healing journey. I find it is pretty, how could I read this and it doesn't look bad? So what did I have? I had the whole, but, I know also what it looks like when I'm not forthcoming with my disability, and how I cried for days on end because the students that I was student teaching, they didn't like me. and they would verbally express their dislike, and that kind of rejection over a long period of time was a trigger for me, and it was like so hard for me to get out of. I was in a perpetual state of freeze. I couldn't get my work done, and nobody knew what was going on with me. And it's just that CPTSD is consistent and is over a long period of time, like your whole childhood. So for me, that was the whole student teaching semester. I took over from their regular teacher, and these kids didn't like it, and they just were very antagonistic and just had a solid wall that I could barely penetrate with most of them. And I was a new teacher, new inexperienced teacher, so I probably didn't do the greatest job. So that really put me in a bind and made me very unhappy and depressed, and made finishing the program very difficult, and everything was very stressful, and I was triggered all of the time, smoked a lot of weed, didn't know how to get out of this, this situation. I couldn't get out of it, it was just like a hell, CPTSD hell. So, I mean, I was 30 years old, but really because I hadn't developed or come out of my disability or in the understanding that I'm at today, even being conscious of what the problem is, matures you. And so all of these steps are steps that I have just taken in the last 5 months, including diagnose myself, I guess, or I guess the first person would be my psychotherapist to diagnose me. And then I started to read books on it and really own and understand that this is indeed a huge part of who I am, and everything that I have done with my life has been a trauma response. And so to really understand that you want to do whatever you can to be conscious of not going into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, the trauma response reactions, and having a dog, believe it or not, helps me to stay out of definitely fight or flight. I think out of freeze, because I have to get up and walk her. Pretty much every 90 minutes she makes me walk her 4 times a day minimum, and when she was in heat I walked her 7 times a day. And then on top of that, you have to feed the dog, and you have to feed her, walk her, and stimulate her, play with her. So there's all these different activities and breaks that are a structured part of your bond with this dog, and that is the medicine. And that's the reasonable accommodation. And right now I think that's a very reasonable accommodation, because there are hardly any students on campus in the high school. I teach like 3 students a day, and then when I do teach more than that, they are special ed kids a lot of the time, and she would be so great for autistic kids who really want to vent, like if I could train her to be that for a certain classroom, that would give me, it's just basically like you are with a dog stepping into your alpha, stepping into your, she helps to spiritually support you, and then does all of those activities which help you release that energy of stress and tension and low self-esteem and doubt that you have inherited and retained from your traumatic past. So I have collected different handouts, and this is a release of medical information that I have a team of people who are working on this whole project. I have a psychiatrist who prescribes me my meds. I am on acetalopram, and that is the generic version of Lexapro. So I have a psychiatrist, I have a psychotherapist who I see once a week, and then I have a primary care provider who is a nurse practitioner. And so all 3 of those people, anyone can talk to those people. I work with them all the time, and I bring my dog in to see all of them. So they've met Satori, they can vouch for her and her behavior. Let's see, and then this is the cover sheet for if you want to get a reasonable request. If it's first, they want to know, is it like you get denied if the individual does not have a disability that limits a major life activity. Um, so work is one of my major life activities, and I can argue that I took a 13-year break from this profession because of that burnout. And so because I'm actually kind of trying to step into having a full-time job, and that is a real barrier for me, but I'm not going to go into that. I am just experimenting with pulling back the personal, too much information, because I think people, especially neglected children, go into story so easily. I already did it on the Quora. You can follow me on Quora. I talk on the CPTSD support space a lot, and they seem to like what I write. So, but, working for the Department of Education, I work for the government, so you can't just bring your dog to school. They're liable for what the dog does to a student or what the students do to a dog. It's like serious. So it's a big ask, but I think that I want to advocate for students who have special education needs, who've been through violence, and I want them to know that they can use this service. They can, their parents, I want to suggest it to the right students. I want education systems to address violence and trauma that happens in schools, that happens in families, the bullying, what happens to kids, like what resources do they have when they're bullied, when they don't have a good family at home. So I just, I'm looking into those resources for people who basically need more love in their lives and have a deficit of that, and that has created a learning disability, that's created depression, that's created a mental illness. So there isn't like a daily function other than work. The daily function is doing the job. I think when I'm regulated, I can do the job really well, and that's why I choose to sub-teach or do part-time teaching jobs, because I fear having to show up perfectly 5 days in a row. It's difficult. Being on time is difficult for me. Scheduling, remembering tasks, I get triggered often. So admitting that instead of hiding it, that's huge. It's hard, right? I did get motivation from other people's asking for accommodation videos, so hopefully this will motivate someone. I saw asking for accommodation videos on PTSD and on ADHD. So if people with ADHD, which I have similar symptoms of, freeze, running from a task, getting caught up and sabotaging yourself with perfectionism, like missing a deadline because you're trying to perfect something, or you're becoming too obsessive compulsive with a detail. I procrastinate to no end. So walking the dog helps me reset and go into the sun. It's always sunny in Hawaii, and just think again and just get out of whatever trance I'm in. So I don't know. You can only ask and see. I do know for a fact that it would help, but they can always say no. So, I was going to show my letter. I'm sorry. See, these are things that I have trouble with, like staying on track. Can a dog help me stay on track? They can't bark and tell me, look, you are, you're going on a tangent, but, look, you forgot your medication again. But they do help me not feel toxic shame when I do have these mishaps. So, if I have toxic shame as a result of messing up a detail, then I'll go home and that will be bad, running from a task, right? So let me see if this window capture is on. Okay. So this is my letter, and I am requesting permission to bring my emotional support animal in classrooms and begin training her as a service dog who can be in service to my disability in school environments. So this is meaning that after she learns her 3 tasks, that she will be with me at all times. But until that time, I'd like to bring her in as an ESA. I believe, based on my experience as a teacher, and I added in Los Angeles because Hawaii and Los Angeles are very different, but they could be similar. Because I know their argument is going to be like, it's different in Hawaii. But it depends on what part of Hawaii. The Big Island of Hawaii is pretty rough. I believe that based on my experience as a teacher in Los Angeles, that there's about a 50% chance that a verbal or physical altercation could occur somewhere on campus at normal capacity on any given normal day. So this means a fight, an argument. I get emotionally flashbacked when people get into verbal altercations, physical altercations. I mean, granted, I was in a really tough school in South Central Los Angeles, and that's where I did my first year of teaching. So I have PTSD from that, like that's kind of the impression that I have. I had a hard eraser thrown at my head that it missed. I have been sexually harassed as a teacher. All kinds of stuff. So I feel like it can get very real in a classroom on any given normal day. And this is not to include the chance of school shooting or any kind of hostage situation. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. So that includes CPTSD and PTSD triggers in that paragraph without really detailing anything about my disability. Do you notice that? Not even talking about it. But you can kind of get it. I do talk about it later. And then the next sentence. My emotional service dog. It's not even really a real word. They only say emotional support animal, which I don't like that term. Has been an essential part of my healthy coping mechanisms toolkit for my CPTSD, PTSD, anxiety, panic, and depression. Regularly walking, training, and having her with me all day has definitely decreased my trauma responses in the 4 months that I've had her. She is trained in basic obedience and has accompanied me as a service dog in training in many public spaces in Oahu. And then I list my trauma responses. And then I talk about in October 2019, I think I had somatization or post-traumatic stress. It was very difficult for me to walk for 3 weeks. I laid out in bed for a long period of time, recovering from basically both CPTSD and PTSD occurring at the same time. I almost got into a car accident and I was being harassed by my downstairs neighbor. So there was a bunch of things going on. And for 3 weeks I was just like, it was very tiring. I was exhausted to walk like 100 yards. So that is kind of a somatization traumatic response. And I believe very strongly that if I had my dog with me, that things would not have gotten that extreme. Because in the 4 months that I've been with her, the fight or flight has gone down. My freeze states go down because I get up and walk her on a regular schedule. I think 50% of it too is being medicated, but because I'm asking to bring my dog, we're not going to really talk about that. So you highlight the way that the accommodation that you're asking for helps you, and they could say no. I do have a comeback. The second thing is asking for a longer break so I can take care of her and eat a lunch. That's a reasonable accommodation, so that's my second comeback if they don't allow me to bring the good dog, which I don't understand why they wouldn't. But of course, I wouldn't understand. But anyways, I am going through the process for other people who want to go through the process. And I will make another video when this is going to be a long process. Everything, including me being hired, took 2 months. This whole process, as soon as I start it, is going to be a back and forth between my psychotherapist, my psychiatrist, and my primary care provider. And I'm sure it'll take 2 months. So, in the meantime, your disabled body needs to learn how to deal with everything the best that you can. You can ask for, I learned, a emergency accommodation, which my vice principal already knows my dog. I interviewed with her, and I think she would, especially because the population of the student body is like so sparse. So it's a great time to train her. Anyways, I will keep you informed. Thank you for subscribing to my channel and commenting. Aloha. Oops. Oh my god. Wait. Can you see that? Oh yeah, okay.